Modern format has over 10 years of gameplay and 20 years of sets to work with. A format deep not only in history, but in gameplay and deep synergies. And I want to use this video to go over 5 of those interactions, ones that work with counterplay, ones that work in synergy, and ones that many of you have probably come across. But that's the point. There are some of you that haven't interacted with any of these synergies, and so I wanted to point them out, maybe have them become of use in your next game, but also help you be that smart MTG nerd that can actually someone at your next FNM. Now, if you want to see more videos like this going over maybe some pauper interactions, some legacy interactions, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you want to see, because I would love to do this video again. Also, apparently 72% of you are like not subscribed, so hit that subscribe button. I know many of my views come from shorts, but y'all like me yapping on these videos. Speaking of, I think I should get to interaction number 1 in Orvar, the All form, a card that has come in and out of sideboards for a very long time. Its mana cost, power, and honestly its first couple lines of text don't really matter. What we really care about is the discard part of it. When a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of any permanent. It could be yours, but most importantly, it's going to be your opponent's. For the creativity matchups, this card is there to beat Archon of Cruelty, a card that the creativity decks use as their primary threat. It will enter the battlefield and cause you to discard a card. That card's going to be Orvar. It's going to enter, copy their Archon, forcing them to sacrifice their creature, lose a card and lose some life, and you gain the life back that you're going to lose, draw a card, and you're still going off from there. One of the favorite one-of tech pieces that I've seen throughout Modern. It's one of those things that exist for those situations where you're not really going to be able to come back from an early Archon. So having it in your hand there as a snipe piece, they can't pick it like they do with Thoughtseize, so it's just one of those includes that's a great 14th or 15th sideboard slot. But that's not the only combo matchup that I have something for. Let's talk a little bit about Belcher. The Goblin Charbelcher combo deck in Modern has been a really weird one to actually make work at all before the days of MDFCs. Modal double face cards added a whole new just power to not only the Charbelcher decks, but the Oops All Spells decks throughout Magic's history. The Goblin Charbelcher decks have become blue, and with the new suite of free counter spells that we have access to alongside Force Negation and Commandeer, Flare of Denial has added a whole new level of protection to this combo. But there are some sneaky ways to interact. Ultimately, they do need to use mana in some way to go about their combo. Part of that comes from their MDFCs coming in as lands, but you as the Orzhov midrange player do have more than one option, specifically with Flickerwisp. Flickerwisp allows you to exile a card and bring it back under its owner's control at the beginning of the end step, and specifically with cards like Hydroelectric Specimen, if you were to flip that card or flicker it on its land side, it actually comes back on its front side as a creature, effectively taking your opponent off 1 mana that they spent a whole turn trying to build up to. Now, of course, Orzhov midrange is playing somewhere between the range of 2 to 4 copies of White Orchid Phantom, so you already have that as a soft strip mine effect, but the fact that you have this on some of your flicker cards as well also helps you tempo out the Belcher player and gives a new angle to what is Modern's most favorite recent winning Orzhov midrange Return of Death and Taxes deck. Without Thalia of Guardian of Thraben though, is it really taxes? Maybe I'm just being a Modern boomer about it. Let's move on to a little bit of Mardu midrange. Ocelot Pride has been in the discussion for being on the ban list for a while now. I personally still think it's Guide of Souls, but Ocelot Pride is going to be here to showcase some of its power. First Strike Lifelink as a 1/1 makes it really powerful. It can effectively block Ragavans really well. We know at the beginning of the end step that it creates 1/1s if you gain life that turn, but a lot of times we ignore the second half of that text because we actually don't get to the long game where that's relevant. You create your 1/1 cat creature token, and then if you have the City's Blessing, you are able to create a copy of all tokens you made that turn, not just the cat token. Think of a card like Ob Nixilis the Adversary, a card that the Mardu energy decks could play and abuse with its casualty ability. Sacrifice a permanent you control as you cast the Ob Nixilis, and you create a token copy of it that can then enter with the amount of loyalty on it based on the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Now the copy is a token and it helps add to your City's Blessing. So if you have 10 or more permanents and you play that Ob Nixilis that turn, that Ocelot's Pride could then create a third copy of the Ob Nixilis. Now, of course, this happens at end steps. You're not going to be able to use any of its activated abilities, but I'm pretty sure creating 3 Ob Nixilises on 1 turn is enough to just shut out your opponent. But enough with one of the most powerful decks in Modern. I think many of you are tired of energy, so let's go on to another more powerful deck, Eldrazi. The Ramshells look to actually copy some elements of one of the most classical cards in Magic, Nulldriftor, a card with an evoke ability that a lot of people use with Ephemerate to get an ETB to continue to draw more cards, a personal Pauper favorite of mine. But when it comes to the analog of Nulldriftor, that card does have some differences. It's a 4/4, it still has flying, does have Annihilator, but specifically the draw effect actually relies on cast, so no flicker shenanigans here. The interaction, however, is specifically with Kozilek's Return, a board wipe that actually does wipe out of the graveyard, gets a free cast in a way, but it's not really a free cast, it's just an ability while it's in the graveyard. Not only is this kind of like an uncounterable effect in a soft way, but when you evoke out a Nulldriftor, you are still casting it for its evoke cost at a reduced price from its 7, but because it's still 7 converted mana cost, you do trigger the Kozilek's Return. A board wipe on a budget, if you will, but you still get the ability to draw some cards. You get a 4/4 out temporarily. Maybe you do have a flicker effect to keep it, but hey, at the end of the day, you spent 3 mana to draw 2 cards in board wipe. I would take that as a win when it comes to evading early aggression in Eldrazi. But let's bring things back to the realm of colored spells. Specifically when it comes to Splinter Twin, the Is It combo deck of old that's now back in the modern format hasn't been seeing too much success. The target of choice seems to be Deceiver Exarch these days. Being a 1/4 with flash is very important. You can end step it, but its 1 power might actually be one of the things holding it back. Specifically, the interaction comes with Tamiyo Inquisitive Student, a 1 mana planeswalker, if you will, specifically in the legacy format where you can brainstorm it out. The modern analog, you do have to jump through a couple more hoops, but especially because it's played in one of the top decks in the format, primarily in the breach decks, we are going to see it come out often to be able to enable Mox Amber. So when you flip it, that's when you get the problem as a Splinter Twin player. The +2 on Tamiyo says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control up until the next turn, it actually gets -1, -0. That's right. That means no matter how many Deceiver Exarchs your opponents create, they all still have 1 power. Tamiyo not only is a seasoned scholar and Inquisitive Student, but also one of the low-key #1 things holding back Splinter Twin. Honestly, we should have unbanned Splinter Twin a long time ago, but it's okay. We're here in the modern format now, and we do have some fun ways to beat some of the busted things that exist in the format. Now, I can't let you get away without 1 bonus interaction. I am that mill guy after all, so of course I'm going to give you something about modern Dimir Mill. This doesn't have to be about Dimir, it's just about Visions of Beyond specifically. A card that I love to tagline with Ancestral in Modern. There are some hoops to jump through, but it's a very powerful option. Usually you're pointing your mill spells at your opponent just to be able to enable this card, but remember that Visions does count both graveyards. If your graveyard has 20 or more cards, then Visions is just as able to be enabled. Now, the current metagame has people playing Tasha's Hideous Laughter, but people are still playing a 1/2 of Glimpse, if not the play set, so you can point those at yourself. Pigeon Crab triggers as well. You can use that to enable your Ancestral in Modern to be able to draw 3 cards. It's an interaction that you can use in a pinch, and one that doesn't really come up too often anymore now that the deck just doesn't play Mesmeric Orb. But filling your graveyard can also be important to Crypt Incursion yourself to gain life off of your own crowds, but hey, wait, that's 2 bonus tips. Look, if I'm going to be honest, I want everyone playing Mill and realize the true power of this deck because it's absolutely insane against pretty much every deck that can beat Energy and Murktide. Unfortunately, the Energy and Murktide matchups are kind of bad, but okay, ignore that. The rest of the matchups are really good. But enough yapping about my favorite deck. Let's just go to the end of the video. Now that's it for my list. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have you learned of these interactions before? Have you come across them in your games? Or did I state something wrong again? Did I make an oopsie just like I do every other time? Comments off down below. Let me know what I messed up on. Of course, if you want to see more videos like this, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, leave a comment down below. What type of interactions do you want to see next? Do you want me to make another video on modern interactions, EDH interactions, Pauper interactions? I would love to, because at the end of the day, even though I get a lot of things wrong, I love to play the game and learn through my mistakes, because that's what it is at the end of the day. I may be misplaying, but I'm still learning, right?